Still working on a sheriff in a small town, the next edition, and have gotten quite far. I'm almost up to 20,000 words, 5,000 more, and I'm halfway there. So yay, get this thing out. I'm going to read one more chapter. Figured you might want to see something where they actually do a little detecting and stuff like that. So we're going to read Hunting, and that's going to be the last chapter from this book for a while. I'll move on to another book that I've been promising, and I do apologize for not having done it. So we'll get that and get that book going, and then we'll see what the next book is. But in the meantime, we're going to read one more chapter from a sheriff in a small town. This one is titled Hunting, and let's begin. Talbot, if I can talk. Talbot loved working the night shift. Rocky did not. That doesn't mean that Talbot pulled all the night shifts. It was spread equally, but their attitudes regarding it dictated how the shift was pulled. There were several ways of doing it. Sleep the shift away, spend half your time doing the rounds outside, spend the night reading or studying. Rocky usually spent a deal of time doing the rounds. It was after 2300 and Rocky was traveling to the west side of the district. As he neared the farm area, the moonlight accentuated a small building. It had been the one-room schoolhouse that served the farmers' children. Now it was closed and boarded. It had ceased to be used towards the end of the 1950s. Since then, it had gained a reputation as being haunted. Bathed in light, he saw flittering shadows moving about in front of it and at the sides. The shadows were the size of children. Pulling to the side of the road, he turned off the engine and lights and watched. It looked as if the ghosts of children were playing outside, climbing the lone tree and peering into the windows. A cold chill ran down Rocky's spine. He turned on the engine and hit the spotlight. Framed in the bright light were several boys who ran for bicycles and made a hasty retreat. One boy gulped as he realized he had to go right past the sheriff's car. Head down, legs pumping frantically, he sped around the corner and skidded on the gravel. Rocky turned the light on where the boy had skidded and got out to assist. Pulling the medical kit, he approached the boy who was trying to get onto his bike while blood dripped down his leg over his shoe. Rocky calmed him down and put some peroxide on the cuts and bandaged him up. He put the bike in the back seat and drove the boy home. "What's your name?" "Franklin." "Am I in trouble?" His voice quivered. "No, but your bike's going to need a chain put on, and I figure it's better if I drive you home." "What were you guys doing at the schoolhouse?" "Looking for the ghosts." Rocky looked over, and Franklin was serious. "We go anytime there's a full moon. That's when they come out." Franklin's eyes widened at the memory of what he had seen. "Tonight I saw him." He floated down from the ceiling and just melted into the floor. It looked like he was walking downstairs, but there weren't any stairs. His voice shook with emotion. You could hear moaning and walking, and Scott thinks he heard someone talking. Franklin directed Rocky near to his home. Stopping, Rocky got the chain replaced, and they departed a bit away as Franklin didn't want to have his parents see him arrive in a police car. Talbot arrived at work to see Rocky poring over old issues of the Sentinel. Beside him was a listing of times people had commented on hauntings at the school since it closed and a calendar with the dates circled. The list of the people who had investigated was illustrious, enough that Rocky was tempted to take it seriously. Looking up, he was startled to see Talbot sitting beside him, peering over his shoulder. Agnes was next to burst on the scene. She had been worried that Rocky was taking so long to come home. Certain that something momentous was happening, she was not going to wait around and find out. Makayla was with her since they had planned to have breakfast together. Rocky explained what happened on his shift and what the kids had seen. He described how it had affected Franklin as well as the list of people who had corroborated the story. Tonight is going to be another good night for sightings. I'd kind of like us all to do a visit. He looked up to see the variety of looks on the faces of his audience. Talbot was eager. Agnes, slightly incredulous, Makayla apprehensive. Agnes got Rocky's coat off the rack and helped him put it on. Come on, let's get you home. If you're going to insist we do this, you better get some sleep. Rocky suddenly realized how tired he was and followed after Agnes. Makayla followed, and looking back at her husband, they shrugged regarding the coming expedition. Alone, Talbot did checks, then went into the back to pack a bag with equipment for investigating ghosts. Together, packed into the truck, they set off for a ghost adventure. Agnes was intrigued that they were headed for the old schoolhouse. My grandma used to go there. She walked from the farm in bare feet in the summer. Her mom would trade eggs for the books she needed, and Grandpa would heat up potatoes for her in the winter. Why potatoes? Well, to keep her hands warm and to eat later along with whatever else they had said. Talbot handed out flashlights and checked the tape recorder to make sure that it had batteries. Arriving when it was just getting dark, they walked around outside, checking to ensure there was nothing that might make them think they were hearing something they weren't. Other than a branch that scraped the roof, the area seemed clear. Agnes had stopped off at the Historical Society for the key. They didn't seem to want to give it to me at first. Ever since the first reports of ghosts got around, there have been people coming over and they're worried that the place may be damaged. Rocky understood their concerns. So how'd you give it to them? How'd you get them to give it to you? I said you two wanted to investigate so that you could either prove or disprove the ghost stories. If you disprove them, then there won't be so many people wanting to get in and explore. Either way, we may be the last allowed to visit, so we better make this investigation a good one. Inside the school, the partially boarded windows and shadowy darkness added to the macabre atmosphere. Talbot couldn't help sneaking up on Makayla and tickling her. Her scream echoed as it bounced off the barren walls. She swatted his arm playfully. To start with, they sat at the desk and waited. In the breeze, they could hear the scraping of the branch. The cool breeze that came through the walls added a chill to the air. Agnes had a notebook to write her version of the events. The first spectral sound was a low moan. It had a deep, hollow sound that reverberated off the walls. It varied in tone and rose to a wailing before sighing back into a moan that drifted off. A new sound like rattling of bones could be heard from the back of the schoolhouse. It wasn't loud and didn't last long, but it was still long enough to give them goosebumps. A chill breeze flowed through the building and passed by them. Makayla was constantly stroking her arms to make the hair lay down. Agnes felt something stroking her hair and jumped. Nothing was around her, but she felt a presence. It didn't feel as if it was angry or upset, but was warm and loving. She felt a nudge pushing her forward. Moving up, she felt another. She sat down when she felt nothing further. Opening her notebook, she made a record. Talbot was prowling around, watching everything. He had gotten towards the front of the building where the teacher would have sat. Sitting at the desk, he heard a scream that made him jump and sit at one of the desks. With another shriek, he apologized for sitting at the teacher's desk. He looked around to see everyone grinning at him. Rocky was wagging a finger at him. The moment picked up again, and Talbot turned on the tape recorder. A low voice seemed to be coming from the front desk. Talbot had vacated. Rocky checked his watch. It was about the time the apparition was supposed to descend. Rocky hissed and had everyone watch the side wall opposite the window. All eyes were intent, and the collective gasp was heard as the slow little silhouette of a man could be seen. Starting at roof height, he slowly descended. Rocky squinted and would have thought it might be a reflection off something, except the legs moved one after the other. A reflection off a mirror couldn't accomplish that. The vision slowly descended through the floor and vanished. Well, that was enough for Agnes. Okay, we've seen enough. Right. We can have some lights and do some checking around, right? Right? Talbot brought out the lanterns and placed them around. The light was a welcome relief. Talbot turned to Rocky. Okay, Sheriff, where do we start? The sound of moaning was still audible. Well, let's start with that moaning. Everyone walked around to hear where it was loudest. Strongest here in the corner up near the roof. Agnes found a ladder in the back area, and she and Makayla brought it forward. Makayla wanted to honor of discovering the first debunking. Climbing up the ladder, she moved her flashlight beam over the area. As her light moved, it was reflected with a greenish hue. The sound was distinct up in the rafters, and she found an object tied with twine to the beam. It was an old green glass Coke bottle. When the wind passed over the mouth, it made a hollow moan. Rocky went up and took pictures and then plugged it so they wouldn't be distracted. Well, one down, what's next? A scream shot out of the air and faded. How about that scream? Rocky took his flashlight apart and added a blue filter. Walking out to the back of the school, he sat on the ground and waited. The scream pierced the ear again, and Rocky was ready with his light. Shining into the bushes, he spied glowing orbs. The scream echoed off the back of the schoolhouse as the fox was joined by her mate. Rocky came in grinning. Just some fox calling for her husband. Makayla was feeling at the wall where the glowing ghost descended. She turned around. Well, what about the ghost? They went to the opposite wall and went over carefully. A few holes were found, but the walls weren't thick enough. You could put a projector behind them. Rocky went to the car and got out a spare antenna. Pushing the metal probe in one of the holes, he deduced there was a slight gap of maybe a couple of inches. There's mechanical means to doing that, ghost. I'm darned if I know what it was. Pet was over at the window, shining their brightest light over the frame. A soft laugh proclaimed he had found something. Makayla hurried over. There's a small mirror in the frame. Rocky turned off the lights. All eyes went to the wall, but nothing was reflected. Rocky went to the opposite wall. Agnes, tell me when I'm about center where the ghost was. He moved back and forth until Agnes called stop. He placed an X in chalk on the floor and walked as straight as possible to the other side. There was a small hole. Placing his eye on it, he had Talbot angle the light as much as possible in every direction he could. Still nothing. He squatted there trying to figure out what he was missing. Talbot made a dash for the door, calling out as he went. It's probably something to do with the moon. Rocky placed his eye on the hole again and waited. Talbot matched the placement of where the moon would have been earlier and turned on the light. Rocky fell backwards, blinking. On the wall opposite was a man standing partway down the wall, walking in place. Agnes was impressed. Whoever did these was smart. Can we see how they did it? Rocky got the ladder and placed it aside the board where he was looking through. Pulling gently on the board, he was surprised when it came easily away from the wall. The board had been held in place by pegs, not nails. Fiddling down, attached to a thread, was a small oval mirror. On each side was a silhouette of a man. Each side had an alternate leg forward. The mirror had been painted black except for the part to be reflected. Agnes held it in her hand, and something puzzled her. Why is it hanging upside down, and why do we see it right side up? Sitting at one of the desks, Makayla held up her hand. When everyone laughed, she quickly lowered it. Agnes, when you were in school, did you ever make a oatmeal can container or a camera? Oh yeah, I did. Remember that on the negative, the picture was upside down because the light came in through the pinhole? It's just the same, but opposite. The light is shining out through the pinhole, and the image reflects upside right. She folded her hand on the desk and looked smug. Talbot looked over at the expression on her face. Teacher's pet, he muttered. Together, Rocky and Talbot wrote out their findings and took pictures. Agnes pulled out her notebook and checked off the things they had found. All had been explained except hers. Rocky, there's something I don't think we've cleared up. I felt something touch my hair, and when I stood up, it pushed me from that desk to this one. I smelt something I can't remember what the smell was, but it was familiar, something I associate with love. Rocky looked at both desks. On the top of the one she moved to were several initials scratched deep into the wood. Agnes did a rubbing of them until she got to one in the upper right-hand corner. SBM were written in familiar hand. Sarah Vaughan Monroe, she said quietly as she ran her hands over the writing. That's my grandma's writing, and initials. She used a separate piece of paper and rubbed it. She planned on framing it when she got home. Packing up, they congratulated themselves on a ghost hunting expedition that had been fun and informative. Rocky was placing the board back in place when he saw an envelope attached to the underside of the beam. It was just addressed to whoever finds this. Opening the envelope, he took out a sheet of the wide-lined paper used long ago. He read the missive aloud. Hi, today is June 12, 1957. This is the last day this school will be open. We three were tasked with helping boarding it up and closing it down. I have the key and will turn it in tomorrow. Why have we kept it? We wanted to play one final prank. There are a few things hidden around here. We've tested them all, and whenever anyone visits at night, wow, what a fright they'll get. Ken thought up the ghost who walks, and I thought about the Coke bottle howling. Lewis made the bone wind chime. The foxes and other animals that live around here will add a lot to the haunting. Now you know the secret of the haunted schoolhouse. If you figured it out, let people know what you did and put it in the paper or something. Hopefully we're around to see the news. Hope we didn't scare you too bad. Best wishes, Ken Randolph, 13, Louis Peterson, 12, and me, Joseph Campbell, 13 and a half. In the morning, the write-up was ready and sent in to the Sentinel. A week of waiting to see if there was any mention of that those who had written the note had seen the write-up went by with no word. Agnes went to the library and found that all three men had died in the submarine Thrasher SSN 593 during a test dive. So that's Haunting. I apologize for my voice being kind of off today. But that is, again, the last reading we're going to do on this particular book. I will get this thing done. I'm just having to, right now I'm looking up stuff from the 1920s and the town that was called Little Chicago here in Ohio. And Sheriff Morgan, when he was a young man, about 5 years after he became sheriff, a lot of stuff was going on in the next town over that was called Little Chicago, just feeding over into his town. So he had to work not only with them, but he had a lot to deal with on his own, so trying to clean up all the corruption. So that's kind of like in the next coming chapters, how he did it and things that he's talking about, this class that has invited him to talk about what's the difference between a city policeman and a rural policeman. So kind of will be some interesting stuff that I've been researching. So that is it for today. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening in on these stories. I hope you enjoy them. And I really wish you'd comment and let me know that you're hearing these and that you like them. And just let me know if you like these stories, the other stories that I've been reading, things like that. I will see you again probably in a few days. So have a good day, be good to yourselves, and take care. Bye.